Welcome to Building Better Businesses, an ABA podcast. Learn firsthand from business owners who built successful ABA businesses. Utilize proven techniques and strategies to help your practice thrive. This is Building Better Businesses, an ABA podcast with Jonathan Mueller.
Erika Kinnebrew is a BCBA who got her master's at FSU and is the founder of not one, not two, but three different ABA practices. After successfully selling her practices to Acorn, she co-founded ABA Engine to make waitlists a thing of the past. Welcome to the pod, Erika.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So Erika, I have to start with most people who start one ABA practice like me, I feel are crazy enough as it is. And you've started freaking three ABA practices. Tell me more about your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, so it's kind of a crazy, wild ride. It started in Monterey, California, where I met Jeff Gabrielson, the founder of Aptitude, which was later acquired by Blue Sprig. And he hired me to open his Clarksville, Tennessee location. My husband was in the Army, so we moved to Annapolis after that, opened my own company there, and branched into Virginia, and then had an opportunity to open a company in Michigan, northern Michigan. The reason why I didn't brand it under Turning Point, which was my Maryland and Virginia company, is because it was going to be a different model. For those who have been operating or employees in different states, there's little tweaks to the model that can make a company more successful in one state than in another. You could have this perfect model. A good example is center, big broad brush strokes, center versus home-based, right? And that was kind of one of the big differences for these two. Turning Point was center-based in Maryland, and that was a model that worked really well there. But it wasn't going to work with the more rural location in northern Michigan, so it needed to be a different model. And there were other tweaks rather than just, it wasn't just home-based versus center-based. So, and then I branched into Florida. Then I partnered with Dr. Josh Pritchard, added another city in Florida, and branched into Georgia. And so they it's just naturally kind of ended up with three different companies.
I love that. What that speaks to me is it's sort of like building authentic relationships. That means you bring to a relationship that which you want to engage in, and you make that real. And it's almost the same way you were bringing to those states that which they needed, and that structure, that organizational structure that was best going to work in that state's operating environment. And that feels really neat. I mean, do you have any recommendations for an organization who might be branching into a new state, or what to consider about starting an entirely new, say, LLC, a new company, versus doing it under the banner and articles of incorporation of their existing company?
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, if I had to do it again, I think you can do it either way and be successful. Obviously consider rural versus urban. What's your population density? Thinking about your client, what are they? What is the makeup of that client in that area? Do you have a lot of Medicaid families? Do you have a lot of single moms? Do you have a lot of one income households? Because maybe you have families with one car. There are things to consider like that. Big picture, what makes the most sense from a model. And now we're looking at in our field kind of this, I think it's morphed, kind of started in home, pushed to the center-based model. COVID maybe pushed us back in home a little. And then there was this crazy telehealth that all of a sudden became a wonderful tool. And now I think we're trying to, as a field, hold on to that more because we can see the value, and all of a sudden we can reach families we couldn't reach before. So I think that there's value in the tools and there's value in the business models. We have to have all of them if we're going to reach all of the kids.
Yeah, well said. And I think there's this expression that like all healthcare is local, right? And so if nothing else, listeners that you may be taking away, know that you have to bring a model that resonates locally, as opposed to trying to say we're going to stamp out something that boom is going to be like 50% of what everyone in all 50 states is going to need. Well, Erika, what were the highest and lowest parts of your entrepreneurial journey?
Oh man. So as you know, I'm sure as an entrepreneur, it's like the best roller coaster on the planet. And unfortunately, you don't get the fun highs without figuring out how to mentally strengthen yourself to deal with the lows, because you can't have one without the other. I would say the highest parts are the time for me, like the most exciting, the most like what I kind of strive for, like almost a drug, right? Like I'm striving for that over and over again, are the times when everything was clicking. I had put the workflows in place. I had put the processes in place. I had put the right team members in the right places where they were just soaring. And everyone felt like they were successful. Everyone felt like they were part of the team and that they were contributing. And there was buy-in, and there was more than buy-in. There was like a sense of ownership and pride in what we were building. That is incredible. That is the best feeling in the world, when you're all rowing in the same direction and you're all excited to get there. That's incredible. Now you're going to ask me about my lows, aren't you?
I am. You okay? Let me reflect on one thing though.
Yeah.
You know, you put it so well, this roller coasters, but way back in the day, actually when I was living in Hong Kong, my parents were in the foreign service, they were diplomats, we moved around, but like there were in Hong Kong dragon boat races once a year. And we actually had a team one year where literally you had, 20 people-ish in a boat, and you had a paddle on either side. And these are huge boats, right? That take forever to get going. And there was one person at the front of the boat that was just banging a drum. That's literally their only job. I mean, and those who might, row crew, this probably resonates. But like, what was so interesting to me is when that drummer wasn't going and we were all trying to paddle, guess we went nowhere. Or worse, we sort of would like side drift, and like we're putting all this energy into it and we weren't accomplishing anything. And as you described, this idea of like when things are clicking, that idea of a dragon boat, the drummer just boom, boom,
And
boom.
what
And
happens?
every single oar going.
Yeah, and what happens if that drummer changes rhythm? Like, oh, let's have this rhythm. Oh, wait, no. Let's have that rhythm, right? Like, that can kill a team. That speaks to the vision and the leadership and how incredibly important that is, too.
Exactly. That's part of the joy and the really hard challenge of being an
Yes.
entrepreneur. So yes, we've delayed long enough. What was your lowest point of your entrepreneurial journey?
Oh my gosh. I mean, the reality is sometimes the weight is just really a lot. It's just really a lot, and it's hard to carry. And I think that I'm assuming that all entrepreneurs have an entrepreneur monster, but sometimes my entrepreneur monster gets out of control. And that's like that little voice in your head that says, what are you doing? You can't do this. You're a fraud. Why do you think you can do this? What in your background makes you think that you have the skills and the experience to do this? Who are you? So I think the hardest part for me has been keeping his muzzle on, because he is loud and obnoxious and irritating. And when I don't keep him in check, I don't show up as a good leader. So I think that's the hardest. It's like myself, right? I'm like my own worst enemy.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. I mean, the idea that entrepreneurs are cursed with competence, right? And I love that, that imagery of the entrepreneur monster that's like sitting on your shoulder that you're like constantly trying to muzzle, or at least give the right energy to, is really profound. Well, as I understand that you had a successful exit. You sold to Acorn. So what advice do you have for an ABA founder, owner who's considering selling their practice?
Yeah. So I wish that I had talked to someone early in my journey, that I had gotten some advice. And the cool thing for business owners now is there are a lot of ABA, BCBAs who have exited companies. So there's a pool of people that you can talk to, that you can get advice from. And that would be my biggest recommendation. Talk to those people. Some more specific recommendations would be, well, just a little bit more about my experience sitting on the seller side. My first was bringing a family fund in. So I had some experience with a partial sell and then a continued operation, and then with a private equity backed group, Acorn. And then the first job that I held in Acorn, I had the privilege of working on their business development team, and I was able to learn a tremendous amount sitting on the other side of the table. What does diligence look like from their perspective, and what are they looking for when they look under the hood? And it was just a tremendous learning experience that I'll really be forever grateful for. So for a business owner selling, I mean, I think, why are you selling? Maybe there's a reason that you just need to exit. Maybe there's some emergency or something going on. But if you have time, I would say you need to look under your hood, think about what type of business would you want to sell to? Do you want your role to look like going forward? Getting really clear about what it would look like for you is pretty important. And then that kind of gives the directive for, okay, what things do I need to do? I need to, maybe I need to clean up my business model a little bit, or I've got a year runway, so I'm going to focus on this one KPI right here and get it a little bit more clean so that I know that I can exit better. But then also do your research on the companies that you're looking at selling to. You can easily talk to previous acquisitions that they've done and get information about, hey, what did you expect when you went through the process? What was that process like? And what was the other side of it like? And was it what you thought it was going to be? What things do you wish you had known? So I think it's important to do your research and gather as much information as you can. Talking to other people is the best way to do it.
Oh man, it's almost like, to whatever extent possible, to be able to take your time, I think is what I'm hearing from you, and do the research, ask the questions, do the self-reflection. That feels critically important. Why am I selling? What am I hoping to get out of this? What does it mean in my life? What role, if any, do I want to play? Yeah, all that's critical. I think like there's this idea, this is going to sound really funny, Erika, but like of just good hygiene of running a business. Like, I mean, for most ABA practice owners, like who are of quality, you're already doing this for like the clinical side of your business. But then what about for the operations and your consistent reporting? What about just like financial reporting? It's just good hygiene. It's like going to the dentist, right? No one loves it, but you got to do it. And it ends up, saving money down the line, or it ends up you got better teeth and a better smile down the line. But it's like that hygiene thing. But yes, it all starts with understanding what you're trying to get out of it. I think that's powerful. You were really fortunate then, and you are a classic, it sounds like lifelong entrepreneur, who went ahead to start ABA Engine. And I love ABA Engine's founding premise, and that is that wait lists should be a thing of the past. Let's make them go the way of the dodo. So tell me more about why you started it and how you help ABA practices achieve that.
So I'm going to totally butcher this quote because I'm like relying on my memory, but there's a Mark Twain quote that I read recently that the basic premise is success equals confidence plus ignorance. So I went into the tech side of things because I have confidence in ignorance. So that's kind of, I guess at that moment in time, I had shut up my monster and he wasn't talking to me.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, this is a good idea. Let's go start a tech company. But the problem that I saw in our industry was managing that. Like, so we have practice management platforms that manage kind of the client piece, right? Once your client is in the door and they're working with you, and we all know ABA is intensive. So there's a lot of scheduling, there's a lot of billing, all of those pieces, but there's nothing prior to. And so what happens is clients end up on waiting lists because the only way to manage that is through spreadsheets. And it's first of all, it's cross-functional. And it's not only cross-functional for one aspect of the business, it's cross-functional for two aspects of the business, onboarding and intake. And both are cross-functional and both have to come together at the right timing. There's nothing to manage that. And so that is what I wanted to solve in Turning Point when I was operating it in Maryland. And we completely eliminated our waiting list. And we went from about 60 days from the family first hits our, like either they fill out a form or they call us, till they have their direct service start, to less than 30. And we were able to do that because we got really clear about the details in that whole big mess of things. And the way I was able to get very clear about the details is because I had visibility. And we don't have visibility. You know, someone owns some part and then they give it to someone else. But even that transition doesn't have visibility. So that is what I wanted to solve. At the simplest base form of it was a software that allows you, the business owner, to see, or whoever's managing it, to see the pieces of the intake pipeline, if you think about a funnel coming down, and the pieces of the onboarding pipeline, so that they can, and it's map based, so they can match those things. You know the timelines between each of the pieces, and you match up your employees and your clients, so that neither one is waiting. It's a great idea, and it will, I think, be revolutionary.
That is revolutionary. The idea that we could actually get away from wait lists. And to clarify, like the you solved that at your Maryland ABA practice. You did not yet have ABA Engine. Tell me a little bit more about this idea of the details, like what those specific details are that you have to get right. Because I think this is one of the less understood notions, that there's not a silver bullet, right? That you can like fire and say, all right, wait list is gone. The reality is there are these dozens, if not hundreds, of like interdependent variables that you just got to get each one right on. And I think that's what you were highlighting. What are some of those details that like practice owners should be thinking about? And that I'm assuming ultimately went into designing ABA Engine.
Yeah. So how we solved it in Turning Point was incredibly manual. We used metadata and Central Reach, spreadsheets, built out Power BI dashboards. And so it wasn't super cohesive. There was a tremendous amount of manual. It relied heavily on key employees controlling all aspects, which you and I both know that's not scalable. You can't base something around an employee. So I wanted to find the solution that was scalable, which is how ABA Engine was born. But going back to your question about the specific pieces, if you think about the onboarding stage, well, let's do intake first. If you think about the intake stage for a client, and they all go through basically the same process, right? They're brand new. They come into your organization somehow. They call you. They fill out a form online. Someone has to check their benefits. Then you have to gather paperwork. Then you have to request an authorization. Then you get the authorization. It goes to the clinician to schedule the assessment, to complete the assessment, to then kick it back so that the intake team can request the direct service off. And maybe there's some communication back and forth with the clinician if there's not clear information on what every payer provides. You know, there could be like, Aetna needs this also, you know. So you can cut down on some of those pieces. That's more in the details of having your processes and things in place. And so each of those things should take a certain amount of time. And those are the details that if you get really clear about them and you have visibility, you can say, oh, we have a new client, you know, you have X number of hours to call that person back, or you have X number of hours to verify benefits, or once you verify benefits, you have X number of hours or days to request an authorization. And that can be, you know, company defined, but those add up to the total time to service. And you have to then also be able to manage that and match it with the same, you know, parallel track, which is your employees are coming through. And we all know this is intensive, right? So you can hire one BCBA who has a caseload of 8 to 12 kiddos. So you could have a BCBA who's ready. But an RBT, especially if you're doing early intervention, it's like a 1-to-2, maybe 1-to-3 ratio. You've got to, every time you've got 3 clients coming in, you've got to make sure you have another. Every time you've got 2 clients that come in, you've got to have another RBT ready to go. And the same kind of idea with the onboarding for the employees. They've got to get through their HR paperwork. They've got to get through whatever credentialing paperwork is required for your payers in your state. Some states even require licenses for RBTs now. Is it licenses or is it like just, I'm not sure. I think there's out west states that require, they register with a state or something.
Might be the credential.
With the, different from an insurance provider,
with payers.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like all of those pieces,
so.
you have to know those timelines. Or even the board. If you have a brand new person that you're training, how long does it take to get their RBT? So all of those pieces add time.
Would it be fair to say that, Erika, for someone who's wanting to like tackle this waitlist problem, one of the first things to do, if you haven't yet done it, is just document your process. Just like literally just write down, here's how it's meant to happen. If you can, put it in a lucid chart or write some kind of visual process map. And the reason I'm asking, or maybe I'll answer my own question, is like when I found that like something's really obvious, but it's not written down, then I write it down and I go ask like 3 different team members, hey, can you like write it down too? I always end up seeing, oh, wait, hold on a second. The way I visualize is not how it started. But is that like one initial step that an ABA practice could take?
Absolutely. And I think you said something really important there. If you have a process that's cross-functional, oftentimes if you go ask different people, you're not going to get the same answer. And to really pay attention to those pieces, because it's just it can be such a drain on the operational efficiency of a company, and to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So I think that's a great first step, to have different people write down what they think their process is, or what they are operating. What is their process currently, but then what does it need to be when you're looking cross-functionally?
Yeah. So there's like this document, visualize, ask others, make sure that the right stakeholders are involved in providing feedback. You can then identify like what metrics indicate success and measure those. I think heard you describe that. And then you also described, to your point, like you can't have just one person where like everything lies with that personal responsibility. Right. But you can train people effectively, set clear expectations, and make sure that that measurement is happening ongoing. So how do you, this is really insightful. So on the other side of that, thinking about team member onboarding, I know a lot of practices right now are saying, oh my gosh, just get me team members, right? And then I'll think about process. But why is it so important to be thinking about process first in order to enable and unlock bringing on team members to serve kids?
The most obvious answer is that that's their first experience with your company. And that's going to just set a stage that they build things from, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. And the story that they tell themselves about your company starts right there. And so getting them, that first touch, those first pieces are so critical, because that's where you have the biggest chance of buy-in and excitement around your company's vision and what you're trying to accomplish. So you might get them excited later, but that first piece just is incredible in the power, I think, for what it can mean for them as an employee and how long they're likely to stay with you.
For sure. I always like to say, like, we can't get customer experience, like our actual clients are serving, right, if we can't first get our team member experience right. So amen to what you just described. Well, tell me more about how then you translated all these really important ideas into ABA Engine, and how ABA Engine helps to solve these things.
I think that, right now I'm starting with I want to provide visibility, and I want to provide kind of this understanding that this can be more efficient. And then it's technology and it's expensive. Excuse me. So I have a laundry list of wonderful ideas that I want to add that will have to kind of come later as we continue to build it. One of the big things, though, I want to be able to partner with businesses and incorporate their feedback into what we're doing, instead of just, I mean, I have an understanding of what I think it needs to look like from being a business owner as well. But when we get down into the nitty gritty, into the details, I want there to be tremendous amount of feedback from the businesses that partner with us. Instead of looking at, a lot of tech, I think, in our space, excuse me, a lot of tech in our space optimizes for profitability. And I think that you have to have a company that's profitable. But my goal with ABA Engine is to optimize for impact and be profitable. And I think I can do that partnering with other ABA business owners and focusing on our build based on their feedback versus based on just spreadsheets and what looks good to the bottom line.
Yes, visibility is so critical. And you mentioned
ABA practice owners, are billing and insurance issues getting you down? Well, let me tell you, Element RCM is your answer. Element provides world-class revenue cycle management services, contracting, credentialing, authorizations, billing, and more. Element's your partner, so you can focus on what you love to do, providing the highest quality services to your families and clients. Element's a preferred partner of the Behavioral Health Center of Excellence, and its founders have nearly 20 years of experience owning and operating successful ABA organizations. They understand you. They know that every dollar counts, that integrity is everything. Element works with any practice management system, and Element's not a vendor, they're your partner. So find out more and take a free revenue cycle assessment at elementrcm.ai.
I love that. Yes, visibility is so critical. And you mentioned effectively like the double bottom line, like optimize for profitability and impact. It sounds like that's what you've endeavored to do. Now, as I understand, part of ABA Engine is this ABA Connects kind of community. That's an early stage. Tell me more about that.
Sorry, excuse me. Sure. So it is a community that's completely free. The goal, okay, so I'm going to go back to our original app because everything came from there. We have an abundance of clients, but at some point, the clients coming into the pipeline will be addressed through marketing. That's going to have to be something that businesses are already starting to really hone in. And it used to be you could hang a shingle and you had a million people needing services. So getting your clients in through marketing, but how do you get your employees into that funnel? And the reality is there's a massive deficit in our field of both BCBAs and even a greater deficit of RBTs. There are a lot, I know that's hard for us to believe because we've been in the field for a while, but there are people out there who don't know what our field is. There are college students who have never heard of ABA. Back in 2008, when I started this journey, I had a bachelor's in psychology and a master's degree in emotional disturbances and learning disabilities. I had studied behaviorism, but I did not know what ABA was. And it never came up. And so when I met my friend had a child with autism, and they were, I'm like totally squirreling right now. I'll bring it back. Give me just a second.
I love it.
I was in her house watching this ABA therapy session, and I remember looking at her and saying, what is this magic thing that's happening right now? And so she's the one who introduced me to Jeff Gabrielson and got me into the field. That was back in 2008. Fast forward to now, there's still people like me who don't know our field. Okay, so we're creating this app. we can have the client funnel through marketing. How do we get the employee funnel? So that's the next thing I solved for. I'm going to tell you how I screwed up before I tell you about the. So then I created a job app for specifically for RBTs. And we spent a lot of money marketing to pull people into this app, and realize that really what I need to target are not existing RBTs, but people who would love to be a part of this field if they knew that the field existed. You can't market to those people and then have them join a jobs app for a field that they don't know anything about. So I'd create another step. So that's the community. The community is a free space. It's not just for people who are new to our field. I'd love to have RBTs, BCBAs, BCABAs, because I want there to be a mentorship kind of environment. We're launching events next month, which I guess is tomorrow. Oh my goodness. And then marketing to people who would be interested in our field and need more information. And so then bringing them into this community so that they can get the information. And then if this is something they want to pursue, pushing them into the jobs app, which then becomes the funnel for so that's the big picture.
Wow. And we will definitely drop a link in the show notes to the schedule of those coming up. Gosh, Erika, this idea that you could attract people from outside the field to begin a career here. I mean, that we can't grow people internally fast enough in our field to solve all of the needs that clients have. And maybe I'm crazy on this. Maybe this is the flip side of like the positive effect of the Great Resignation, which I know is like unholy to say, but like if yes, people are leaving our field, and there's a heck of a lot of people out there right now that I'm sure I say it's great working at Burger King, but I'm done. Is there more of a calling out there? And I actually love working with kids, or I was a babysitter once. And if we somehow could get in front of them and attract them in this like critical juncture in their career, that could be one way to solve it. Wow, it sounds like ABA Connects has that noble endeavor.
Yeah, and we have it in the app stores. You can just search ABA Connects, spelled Connects, not crazy, just CONNECTS, and it's for Android and for iPhone. It's up and running. We're gonna have more engagement in there soon. Yeah, it's completely free for everybody, except for me. But that's
awesome.
Okay.
And yeah, right. You're paying it forward. That's cool. And it's for BCBAs or RBTs, right? Or prospective BCBAs or RBTs. Is that right?
Yep.
What are some of the differences between starting a healthcare services business versus a technology business?
So a healthcare, technology is very different because software engineers have a different language that they speak that I don't understand. And so when I first started this journey, I was like, oh yeah, I'll just hire some developers. That's the ignorance part. Yep. And we'll just do this. So it doesn't really work that way. You can kind of, in a healthcare field, when I started the operating companies, I could research payers. I mean, it took me time to understand, these payers are going to require these things. This is how I need to get my contracting done. This is how I need to get my credentialing. This is how I need to set my business up. Like, I could research and it's not that easy to just research and learn all of the things that you would have to understand to be able to talk to and have a conversation with a positive outcome with a software developer, because they're just tracking something completely differently. They don't understand your world. You don't understand their world. And so pretty quickly in the journey, I realized I needed someone to help me bridge that gap. And so that's when I called a friend of mine who I'd known for years. Her name is Christina Bernard. She's brilliant, and she is a data scientist. And I said, Christina, I need help. And so she referred me to some colleagues of hers who had like software companies. And I ended up coming back to her and I said, okay, when I say I need help, what I mean is I need you. What is it going to take? Like, because I can't do this without you. So she came on as a partner and has just been an incredible piece of our journey. I would say the other thing that's very different is when you start a software company, you don't have a ready-made customer base. You know, you have an idea that what you're building is going to solve a problem, but there's not a guarantee. Versus for ABA, there's almost a guarantee that, I mean, there is a guarantee, right, that you have a customer base who wants your service because you're providing a therapy that's incredibly needed and has already been provided by other people. So no one else has built this software before, so I have no idea, other than my assumption that this is the solve and this is something that's going to be adopted. So it requires, I think, a tremendous amount of research up front, really knowing and understanding your customer just to kind of mitigate that risk. So we have 2 pre-signed companies, so that makes me feel like I'm headed in the right direction. But it is very different from starting an ABA company. Yes.
Just the fact, though, that Erica, that you had the self-awareness and the low ego enough to say, I need help. I think, gut check me on this. This is one of the hardest things about being an entrepreneur, right? If you're an entrepreneur designing this organization with a mission that is meeting these critical needs that, that no one else has met before, you're envisioning this world, as I like to say, that doesn't exist. Like you're just crazy enough to do that. It means you have to have so much confidence in what you're doing. That's the powerful part of being an entrepreneur. But the flip side is it can be really hard to admit, you know what, I don't know enough about, in this case, as you described it, data science and technology, and you needed a partner for that. Or even an ABA practice owner maybe saying, I don't know as much about operations. I don't know as much about revenue cycle, whatever it might be, if they come from a clinical background. But that takes really low ego, right? Like, how do you cultivate like that sense of like, hey, I'm going to be curious enough that it's okay if I don't have the answers and I might need to bring someone in to help me?
I think it's just what is your driving force? I'm an entrepreneur, not because I like building things, right? So it doesn't matter to me if I'm building them with someone else, as long as I can actually I prefer to build them with someone else. It's more fun. But as long as I can see my vision come to fruition, that's my driving force. So, I mean, I would love to say, oh yeah, it's low ego. I got that one. I don't know that that's true, but I think it's more honestly, just my focus is, what do we need to do to make this happen? What needs to be in place? What people need to be here? What are the steps? And it just isn't about me. It's about the thing that we're building. That's what's exciting.
It isn't about me. It's about the thing that we're building. Oh, so well said, Erica.
Thanks.
That's genius. I noticed your LinkedIn tagline. Here, I'm going to try not to butcher here, but I think it really struck me and it resonated. But it was scaling applied behavior analysis businesses more efficiently through technology. Oh, Erika, that's just so well said. And like my question, I don't know if this is even an answerable question, but why is the healthcare field generally, and the ABA field in particular, like why are we so in the Stone Age when it comes to technology?
It's so funny because I didn't know we were until I brought Christina on, and she's like, you guys can't do this, you can't do that. Why can't we API connect into your practice management platform? I'm like, oh no, what you're talking about. I don't know why. I have since learned what API means, just for the record.
Yeah.
But she kind of opened my eyes to this reality that, and especially now as we're building this tech company, I mean, the just silly little pieces of software that she's like, oh, we're going to use this to do that. And I'm like, I didn't even know that existed. So I think that, though, in general, in the healthcare field, the contingencies in place for doctors, hospitals to spend money on technology, they're not in favor of the spend, because typically technology is going to bring more power to the patient, more visibility, more access to care, easy, like reducing the hurdles to change providers, right? And they're not incentivized to do that because, and I don't think this is necessarily conscious. I think that doctors and hospitals and people in the healthcare field are good people, but they're incentivized to keep their patients. That's their revenue. So I think just kind of in general, it's a risk, and then the incentives aren't necessarily there. And then specifically in ABA, you have a field that was really built by clinicians, not business owners. And so then you start pushing tech in and you ask them to spend money on something that's going to have an ROI later. And it's a concept that isn't necessarily easy to understand, number one. And number two, most small business owners are in the weeds. And so there's also a perspective and mindset shift that has to happen. So I think those are probably two reasons why we're Stone Age techies.
Yeah. So insightful. An API is application programming interface for our listeners. It's just a very basic data link between two different softwares, which, by the way, is super common through the rest of our lives, and it's going on all the time. It does not happen as much in our field, where different softwares talk to one another. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. And like, we all have experiences with software that are less than ideal, right? And I think part of that just comes from expectation, right? Like technology, I like to think of, doesn't improve our lives; it only changes our expectations. And so we have to be really clear going in that no software is going to be a panacea for everything. There's not, coming back to that idea of a silver bullet, there's not a silver bullet for wait lists. There's not a silver bullet for software. But when used appropriately, when the right ROI is calculated, as you described, when you're clear what you're trying to get out of it, and you appropriately resource it, that's where there can be, I think, magic. What do you think, Erika, is... what's one thing like every ABA business owner should start doing? What's one thing they should stop doing?
I think, you know what, that's really different for different size companies. So like for a small mom and pop company, I think that they need to stop trying to do everything. The business owner needs to stop trying to do everything themselves and grow. Because that leads to like panic attacks and massive burnout, and start, delegating and training and putting staff in positions that, the business owner probably could do better, but put a staff member in there, allow them to fail, train them, get them successful in that position. For large companies, I think that they need to listen better to their staff and not just the sounding board that they have around them kind of in the executive boardroom, but the people on the ground, the ones who are in the trenches doing the work. They need to listen to them. I think that's probably the most important thing that big companies need to start doing.
I heard something. I heard many things really important what you described, but you use this term, allow them to fail. This is so important. I feel like in life generally, right? In order to learn, we have to fail at things. Hopefully, it's not a catastrophic failure, right? It's not the 1-year-old who like accidentally puts their finger in the socket. All right, don't make it catastrophic, but like you have to have a safe environment in which to fail so that you can learn. Because learning doesn't come except for if you only have successes in life, you will never learn. Right, so I think that's really critically important to take away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Erika, throw one question at me, any question, and make me answer on the spot.
I want to know what other industry or type of business you would love founding if for some reason you couldn't do anything in or near or around ABA.
Oh gosh, okay, so I'm not allowed to start another autism related, ABA related.
Right.
Oh gosh. Okay. This is unscripted, so I have to. Actually, the answer immediately comes to mind. Are you ready? You're going to think I'm crazy, though.
It's going to be. Wait, let me guess. Can I guess?
Yes, please, please.
Is it going to be some kind of outdoor adventure company?
So you know what's so interesting about that? About 15 years ago, when I had my life epiphany and I transitioned from the corporate world and Silicon Valley and boring corporate stuff, I founded an outdoor education nonprofit, Sierra Nevada Journeys, in Reno, Nevada, and we were in the greater Reno, Lake Tahoe area, Eastern California. That was an extraordinary experience, and we grew to serving like thousands of kids a year, and actually it's still going amazingly today, even though it's been like 11 years since I was there. And so I got to do that, and now I see outdoors more as that's my passion, and not maybe more importantly just my passion. What I love to do most is teaching my kids that. So skiing, mountain biking, climbing, like being able to do that as a family. So I'm going to keep that my passion. You're right on that side of my passion. But the organization I would start, you know what? Honestly, I think it would be a blockchain / crypto asset related organization.
Oh,
yeah, and
that's interesting. I love that.
I'm going to try not to go off. I won't go off the deep end too much on this, but here, one of the things that I think is happening more broadly in our world and in our country is we just loss of trust. Right? Mm-hmm. There's loss of trust in institutions. There's loss of trust with each other in communities. There's loss of trust in government. I mean, there's loss of trust in companies, right? And we see this in our field, right? With like loss of trust in, say, I don't know, non-independent ABA providers, those that are private equity or venture capital backed. And so with this, so that's just a trend that's happening, right? That I think we are generally as a world less in control of. What are we in control of? The ability to create organizations and governance institutions that can act in more trustless environments, but that still promote the kind of trust that I think we would all hope for in our communities. So what's an example of this? DAOs, or decentralized autonomous organizations. In fact, just a few months ago, the Constitution DAO was one of the first of these that pooled, within a few days, it pooled tens of millions of dollars to go bid on a replica of the Constitution, or an authentic replica. So this is really interesting, right? Like normally to raise that kind of money, venture capital has to go out and get a fund and there's all kinds of stuff that goes into it. They raised it literally in 2 or 3 days. And they brought together people who were extraordinarily interested in owning a teeny tiny fractional share of an authenticated constitution. That's kind of cool. And they developed their own governance structure about how they would create rules and things. Now, the Constitution DAO ended up being a failure, and mostly because they published the price they were going to buy the Constitution at. So there was a financier that came in and bid $1 more. The point is, I think there's something really, really profound in creating this additional governance type system in trustless environments that still creates communities and authentic relationships, allows people to engage in the things they love doing, allows them to bring money to bear, right? It's one thing to say, oh, I love the Constitution. It's another thing to actually say, I'm going to put up $100 or $1,000, whatever it is. I think that's really powerful. And so it wouldn't be specific to autism, but it would be specific to healthcare. And it would be, how can we put protected health information, PHI, back into the hands of consumers so that consumers own that information. They decide how it gets used. They can use it however they want it to get used. If they wanted to sell it to a pharma company, great, right? They can make money with that. And then pharma presumably it works out designing new drugs. So
that would be incredible.
I'll stop there, but.
that would be incredible. I think that's a phenomenal idea. Well, I want to know if you get to do it.
All right, sounds good. I will. Man, that actually sounds kind of exciting as I talk about it. We'll see. Erika, where can people find you at ABA Engine online?
So abaengine.com or LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. If anyone is interested in reaching out to me, I love talking to people. If you're interested in selling your business, I'm happy to chat with you and you can bounce some ideas off of me. I've sat on both sides of the table. If you're interested in consulting, I also am doing that. Something's got to fund this tech company.
Right.
If you're interested in ABA Engine and using our software, I would really, really love to talk to you. So yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn or Erika at abaengine.com.
Awesome. I appreciate your willingness to share your wisdom and ideas with others. That's such an important part of our ABA field that I found.
Awesome.
All right. Well, are you ready for our hot take rapid fire questions?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
All right, Erika, you're on your deathbed. What's the one thing you want to be remembered for?
Honestly, that people would say I brought out potential that they didn't see in themselves.
What's your most important self-care practice?
This is actually okay, so I'm not doing the rapid fire thing. I'm going to answer it and then I'm going to explain it. Focusing on others first. I think it's an upside down economy. And you really don't get joy when you focus on yourself. You really don't get to experience true joy.
I agree 100% and in spades. Be a giver first. Many things will come back in return. I love it. If you could cancel all meetings and skip all your responsibilities for a day, how would you spend the day?
Reading. Anything I could get my hands on.
Nice. Any awesome books you've read recently that you want people to know about, that they just have to read?
I don't know if people would think that they're awesome. I'm currently reading a book about Galileo. I'm reading a marketing book and an influencer book. So I don't know that they're high exciting content.
Those sound interesting to me. And I'm going to, I'll get the names of those so we can put them in the show notes. Okay. You sound like me where I usually have 3 or 4 books going at any one time. Yep. That's cool. What's your favorite song ever?
So Hark the Herald Angels Sing. And it's because my mom sang it to me when I was a child, when she put me to bed every single night, all of the verses. And it's just a really precious memory that I have of her.
That's beautiful, Erika. And a beautiful song.
It is.
If you could give your 18-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Just hold on. Just hold on. I don't even have anything better to tell you than just hold on. You're going to screw up a lot of things and it's going to be really hard. Just keep going. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. I love that. You could only wear one style of footwear for the rest of your life. What would it be?
I didn't know there were multiple styles of footwear. I just wear flip-flops.
Ooh, well said. Well said. And on that note, Erika, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time and for sharing your energy and wisdom with us.
Yeah, thank you. It was wonderful. And I'm not as nervous as I thought I would be.
You crushed it. You crushed it. Thanks, Erika.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Building Better Businesses in ABA podcast. Stay tuned for our next exciting episode. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. We value your feedback. Don't forget to follow us on social media at elementrcm.ai.